Back to Walks and Wall Street. Today is Tuesday. It is March 26th, 2024, and it's about 9:18 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are reporting live on the corner of East 56th Street and Madison Avenue. We're actually right behind the Trump Tower. I thought it'd be appropriate to start the live stream directly outside of Trump Tower for the first official trading day of Truth Social. Now, the merger went through, right? This was a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition company, and now it is successfully trading under the ticker symbol DJT for the initials of the former president. Now, I don't want to talk about that too much. Again, crazy volatile action. I think at one point this thing was trading almost at $80 a share, came back down to earth, trading at $57. But we got a lot of economic data today. We got also a lot of bad news. There was a horrible bridge collapse that happened. I'm sure everybody is aware. Really almost unbelievable. The news that we've been getting out over the last few weeks, it seems to never end, honestly. It's unfortunate, right? First we had the Russia, just horrible terrorist attack, just an absolute disgusting tragedy. I think the death toll's like over 130,000 people, just so heartbreaking. And now we have this massive bridge collapse in Baltimore. So Baltimore bridge crash investigators, essentially they're going to examine whether dirty fuel played a role in the accident. Now, the probe is just starting, but what they're saying is that contaminated fuel may create problems with the ship's main power generators. I think it's the fog of war phase right now. If you've been watching the stream for over the past 2 years, I have a rule. And usually when you have some sort of major event happening, mainly a crisis, a massive scenario, I usually like to wait a week before I jump to conclusions, because almost 100% of the things that we're going to be hearing is probably going to be all fake. If you want to know the truth, just wait a week until the fog of war settles down. Let the investigators do what they have to do, and they're going to find out exactly why this massive tanker ship slammed into the bridge in Baltimore. But it's terrible, because I think about 6 people are missing or they're presumed dead. So first and foremost, I mean, thoughts and prayers go out to the families. From a financial standpoint, what is this going to mean for supply chains, for logistics? It's going to have a big impact, right? Not a lot of people realize how massive this could be. Now, the Biden administration, particularly the president himself, came out and said that they are going to use federal funds to rebuild the bridge. How long that's going to take, anybody knows. We'll talk about that more tonight. Now, we're going to shift gears, talk about the housing market, because we did get some major piece of economic data. Yes, today we heard from the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, and home prices reached brand new highs for January. So let's go over the numbers. So home prices in the 20 biggest U.S. metropolitan areas hit a new high as the housing market deals with an ongoing lack of homes for sale. The S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller 20-City House Price Index rose 0.1% in January compared with the previous month, and on a 12-month rolling average, so on a year-over-year basis, across the 20 major U.S. metros, home prices were up 6.6% in the last 12 months. I'll say that again. Home prices in the 20 major U.S. metro markets were up 6.6% in the last 12 months, ending in January. This is pretty crazy. The reason why we're talking about this is because inflation is the major thing that's driving monetary policy right now. Last week, we got the CPI report out, which came in hotter than expected, and over 40% of CPI is shelter costs. Now, the vast majority of the increase in CPI last week was made up of two things. Number 1, shelter, and number 2, energy. Now, as we look ahead this week, remember, there is no trading on Friday, so fixed income markets and equity indices, or the equity markets, I should say, are closed for Good Friday. It is Easter weekend, but we are going to get the PCE inflation data out right before we hear from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. So it's going to be interesting to see what he says. But if we go back to the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, the city that recorded the highest year-over-year increase in home prices was San Diego, California, with 11.2% increase from last year. You have Charlotte, North Carolina, coming in at 8.1%, Cleveland at 6.9%, and San Francisco, California at 4.5%. Tampa, Florida also coming in strong at 4.6%. And then we have Miami, Florida, which has been absolutely white hot. Miami, Florida is up 7.5% on a year-over-year basis. Now, we'll take a quick peek at the equity indices, and then we'll get this stream started, everybody. The S&P 500 was down about 14 points today, closing at the dead low of the day on heavier volume. Now, if we take a look at the 50-day moving average, the 50-day is pretty far ways away. It's about 200 points away, my friends. 5,029 is where the 50-day moving average sits. Currently, we're trading at $5,200 on the S&P 500. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, or the Dow 30, also fell about 31 points today, closing at 39,282. The 50-day moving average on the Dow stands at 38,650. And then last but not least, the NASDAQ Composite was down about 68 points, closing at the dead low of the day at 16,315. All right, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close up the laptop. We'll say hello to everybody in the chat, and we will get the stream started. If you're new here, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button, because we do these live streams every night starting at 8:30. Thanks so much. All right, let me clip on the microphone. Looks like we're good. And let's get started. Welcome, everybody. This is Madison Avenue and East 56th Street. It's a pretty cold night out here in New York City, but it's a clear night. The storms are going to roll in on Wednesday and Thursday. It's going to be big rain in the city again. Shannon is here, Dennis the Menace, Richard Vogel, Austin City Limits. I see Rocky Rocks, always a pleasure. DC322. Anna, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Dutchman, thank you so much. Tom Barry, what's going on? And Todd says, love the stream. Thank you, Todd. Now, we're going to stick around Midtown again, everybody. Been putting in crazy hours at the office, so haven't been able to get down to exploring other neighborhoods. But as the weather improves, we'll be going down to Lower Manhattan. We'll check out Lower East Side. I really want to get down to the Lower East Side this summer, particularly as the weather gets nicer. It's a really, really fun neighborhood down there. I was just down there today. Walk. I don't know. I don't even know when that is. I know it's coming up, but maybe we'll do something like that. Who knows? Yeah. Now, just, does anybody else kind of feel like there's an overwhelming amount of news happening? That's just very, very unfortunate news. I feel like that's the case. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I want to know what you guys think as we pass Trump Tower. Now, this is the residential entrance. This is 721 Fifth Avenue. And just in the distance there, you could see 53 West 53rd Street, which is one of those Billionaires Row-esque buildings. But Trump Tower is mixed use. You have commercial, you have residential, which is the entrance right here. You also have retail and office. But yeah, I mean, the news about the tanker crashing into the bridge in Baltimore is pretty almost unbelievable. When I watched the video at first, now I don't want to kind of delve in any, theories or whatnot, but to me, it's like, if the tanker, right, and I know these things are massive, can just, tap that bridge and the whole thing just falls apart, I feel like we should be taking some significant preventative measures to build concrete barriers around sort of like the trusses, I don't know what they're called, of the bridge. Because if that can happen once, right, and if the only thing that needs to happen is for, the electric to go out and I think you guys know what I mean. I think there needs to be some significant preventative measures to make sure this never happens again. Because, I mean, what a disaster. Now, not only for the loss of life, right, and I couldn't even imagine driving over the bridge and a freak accident like a ship comes plowing into the bridge and collapses the whole thing while you're driving over it. I mean, that's just like some Final Destination crazy stuff. Like, I couldn't even believe it when I saw it. But that is a massive port for the United States import-export, right? So what is that going to mean for supply chains? What is that going to mean for logistics? Is this going to have a material impact? I think that's yet to be seen. You're probably going to have a lot of these cargo ships diverted further north, obviously, to places like New York, right? Is a major, major port. But I'm very, very curious and interested to see the full investigation, because I mean, everybody's looking at this thing. There's going to be a major, major investigation of just how this happened. There's probably going to be intense litigation, and hopefully we can get this thing constructed and built in no time. The federal government, particularly the Biden administration, came out and said that we're going to use federal funds to pay for it. I think that's the right thing to do. But yeah, just crazy news. Zozo Bob says the bridge was built in 1977 and the cargo ships weren't these huge back then. Little Poots says it lost control and hit the main structure very fast. I mean, it didn't look like it was going that fast to me. Alan says, I work in the automotive industry and we are expecting an impact with the vehicle shipments. Yeah, so Alan, I'm interested to see if you could expand a little bit more on that as we're looking at the Peninsula Hotel, because I was scrolling through X, formerly known as Twitter, and there's an account I follow. It's called The Dealership Guy, and he's saying that a significant amount of vehicle imports come literally directly through there and over the bridge. So with that being down, I don't know how it's going to play out. This could be either a lot worse than anybody's expecting, or it could be a non-issue. I don't think there's going to be any in between. It's just kind of wild, honestly. Caitlin says most newer bridges have things like bumper. Oh yeah, they're called dolphins. Yeah, I mean, they should definitely build those ASAP. If anybody's been to Miami, Florida, I mean, the drawbridges are just like constant. I mean, I'm sure they have preventative measures there. That's another big port, but for something like that to happen, it's just unbelievable. Yeah, someone says they warned the police that they were going to crash, so they were able to stop as much traffic as possible. However, there was a construction crew working on the bridge. Yeah, I mean, thank God for that. I mean, at least they were able to alert the police and kind of stop, more people from going over. I mean, just a crazy, crazy, horrible tragedy. NAV 407 says they are looking at 5 years to replace that bridge. Whew. Well, look, I mean, this probably isn't a good analogy by any means at all. But does anybody remember when that massive hurricane hit Fort Myers, like an absolute horrible hurricane that knocked out multiple bridges? The state of Florida and the feds, right, we're all helping out, they built those things in a matter of weeks. Now, this is totally different. You can't compare it. I totally understand. But you never know. When there's urgency put in place and if things need to get done, things get done, right? For a lack of a better turn of phrase. When things need to get done, you can bet that they get done. I mean, we built the Empire State Building during one of the greatest economic hardships in American history. I think we could use all of our 2024 technology to build this bridge in less than 9 years. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Kind of pivoting and shifting gears here as we're looking at the beautiful St. Thomas Church. Did anybody see the warning coming out of Larry Fink at BlackRock? Did anybody get a chance to see that? Now, this is something that both Larry Fink and I agree on. For those of you who don't know or who are unfamiliar, Larry Fink, real quick, this is the University Club. I love this building. It's stunning. Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. Now, BlackRock just moved their corporate offices from the east side of Manhattan. They were just right off of Park Avenue to the new Hudson Yards development. They're at 50 Hudson Yards. Now, Larry Fink is sounding the alarm bells that we really need to rein in government spending in a major way. And we need to face this retirement crisis, as he calls, head on, because a lot of these obligations that we have to retirees, if we continue on this path that we're going now, it is very unlikely that we are going to be able to fulfill those obligations. Now, there's kind of there's two sides to this story. Because number one, it's quite obvious, right? I think everybody, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you agree that the number one thing that we should be focused on, right, or that everybody could agree on, is that we really need to rein in this government spending. We've had major Wall Street players, major economists come out here and say, guys, this can't go on. You're borrowing from future generations to pay the current retirees. This whole thing is turning into a Ponzi-like scheme. And at what point, right, and this is kind of where I disagree a little bit with Larry Fink, because he said at some point, the desire to purchase U.S. treasuries or to buy U.S. debt is going to go away. There was a prediction made, and he said that he believes that the rest of the world is going to hit a tipping point where they are no longer going to be willing and able to essentially subsidize the American way of life, right? The main reason why, I should say one of the main reasons why things are so good here and America has this really heavy hand on the global stage is because we have the world's reserve currency, the US dollar or the petrodollar, right? That allows us to do a lot of things. It allows us to borrow well beyond our means because there'll always be demand for US debt. So China buys our debt, Japan buys our debt, all of these different nations around the world buys US debt. And why does the United States issue debt? It's to fund our operations, right? So what Larry Fink essentially was saying is there's going to become a time, right? And maybe I don't necessarily agree with him, but according to him, he's a lot smarter than me. I mean, he's the CEO of BlackRock. He says there's going to come a time where the demand or the appeal to continuously purchase U.S. debt is going to go away. And when that happens, the unlimited credit card that we have right now is going to be no longer. You could think of the United States in its current state as an American Express black card that has no limit, right? You could swipe and charge whatever you want, and you never really have to pay it off. That's essentially what we're doing right now. So I wanted to bring this up because this is an election year, and also this is a big statement coming out by CEO of BlackRock. You also had Stanley Druckenmiller, who is arguably one of the greatest position-sized traders of all time that ever lived, coming out and saying the exact same thing, that this debt is unsustainable, and that in an election year, we're really going to have to make some tough decisions to essentially cut some necessary services. But obviously that doesn't get anybody elected. So my question for everybody is, do you agree with what Larry Fink is saying? Or do you think this is a little bit overblown? Do you think this is kind of like fear-mongering? Or do you really truly believe that there will become a time if we don't get our act together and rein in government spending, these other nation states around the world are just going to be like, we're not going to buy U.S. debt anymore. We're just not going to do it. I'm interested to see what you guys think. We're out here looking at the beautiful St. Patrick's Cathedral right on 5th Avenue. Hey, Hawaii is here. What's going on? Thank you for telling me about that concert today, by the way. That was so cool. What a cool thing to do. John, what's going on? Brad says, good thing we are bringing in huge numbers of government-dependent people. Yeah. We can cut my Social Security, though, to fix it and take care of them. Well, that's another thing. It's many people think that Social Security is going to be here forever. Now, I actually, for one, have an interesting take. I do think Social Security is going to be here forever. I do not think they'll cut those. But that's actually not good news. That's actually not good news. Because what you have to think about is the purchasing power of your Social Security check, right? Now, the problem is, and again, it's kind of going to get a little political, but it's important because it ties into the financial markets. No politician that campaigns on being responsible and fiscally responsible is going to get elected, right? Because that's not popular, right? If you're 5 or 10 years old and you're sitting at the dinner table and your mom is, hounding you about eating your broccoli, well, you're not going to think your mom is super cool. But if your mom is, handing you cookies under the table, and throwing out your broccoli, you're going to think she's the greatest thing ever right now. But if you ate your broccoli, it's going to pay off in 10 years, and you'd be like, wow, my mom was great. She forced me to eat my broccoli. But if she continues to feed you cookies, well, by the time you're 15, you're going to have diabetes. You're not going to think your mom's too cool then. It's the same concept here. So our politicians are essentially gaslighting us into oblivion, giving us cookies, which cookies, that's really not a good example. It's essentially they're just jacking us up with fentanyl, figuratively and literally, getting us hooked on it. And 20 years down the line, it may not turn out to be so good. So we'll see. NAV 407 says they can correct the current deficit by reining in government bloat, and Congress needs to find savings in order to pass a new spending bill. That's a good take. Now, I think the only thing that will save us, and I really do believe that we're not going to have any of these problems that Larry Fink is talking about. The age of AI really impressed, like extremely impressed with what they've done. If it's been quite some time since you've been to Rockefeller Center, I would suggest going through the main doors here of 30 Rock and going in the basement. It is totally gut renovated. There's restaurants down there, there's shops, there's like a really cool like Art Deco style looking bar. I mean, they did an amazing job here. I take you down there, but there's virtually no internet there. So if you go through these revolving doors, if you go about halfway down the building and you just take the stairs into the basement, it's like a mini mall down there. It's really cool. There's retail, there's restaurants, there's coffee shops. They did a wonderful job. And that's what a lot of the developers that were working on Rockefeller Center were trying to do to revitalize the project. This building, I'll quickly give you a little bit of an insight of what's going on here. You guys see where the main Today Show studio is? Well, the building directly above it is also a part of Rockefeller Center. Now this is completely empty, by the way. This is totally blown out and vacant. These were offices. We all know what has been happening to offices in New York City. But the good news is this is going to be a really nice hotel. I forget the exact name of the hotel. I think you guys could look it up, but it's some big brand, Aspen, Colorado, or Aspen something. It's awesome. So I'm excited for this neighborhood. I'm excited for the area. They were like, you know what, how can we revitalize Rockefeller Center? Because mainly it was more towards offices and workers. We know that everybody's working remote now. You need to bring tourists here. You need to give them events to do. You need to give them things to do. So you have more ice skating longer throughout the year. They're probably going to put something else down there in the spring, which is going to be the roller skating rink. I'm sure you guys remember that from last year's live streams. And I come here a lot during the day to get coffee with clients and coworkers and things. And this place is always packed. So at least that's some good news. Blues Writer, what's going on? Thank you so much for joining us. I see Dario's here, says hello from Argentina. I was there in January. Missed, okay. Well, good to see everybody from Argentina. Now, talk about a country that's absolutely turned itself around, or is in the process of turning itself around, is Argentina. I mean, wow, what a big change. We could probably spend an entire stream just on that. Now, for a long time, right, Argentina has been suffering from extreme inflation. That's why a lot of times when we cover the topic of inflation in the United States, and when we do a deep dive into CPI, and we say, oh my gosh, CPI came in at 3.1%. This is insanity. This is crazy. Well, yeah and no. It's crazy in terms of the US, but there's countries and places around the world where you're seeing double-digit inflation, if not triple-digit inflation. And Argentina has been suffering, unfortunately, from triple-digit, which is bonkers. Anybody here in the chat from Canada? Now, the reason why I ask is because I follow a lot of Canadians. So not like personal friends of mine, but more like finance friends from X, the Twitter platform. And they've been telling me that the prices in and around Toronto, particularly for like red meat and things like that, are just absolutely astronomical. Is anybody from Canada in the chat could maybe put some context on that? Is that overblown? Is that fear-mongering? Or are things getting a little wild on the inflation front for food up in Canada? Yeah, Trade Brigade is here. What's going on? That's a great account to follow, by the way. If anybody's interested, check out Trade Brigade on YouTube. This is Turkey, another hyperinflation area, for sure. For sure. So that's why sometimes, it feels like Americans always complain to complain. it's good to put things into context, but it's also not good to accept it, right? We shouldn't accept our 3.1% inflation, but we should also not panic and freak out, because other countries and currencies around the world are in a hyperinflationary collapse, which is unfortunate. Here we are at Radio City Music Hall. This is really a testament to the Art Deco style, particularly in and around 30 Rock. Dan H's Canada has become the Dubai of pricing, but the Africa of standard. Jeez. Kurt Flirt. What's going on? David G says ours is higher, I think. A lot of smoke and mirrors happening. That could definitely be argued. Now, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe what you're alluding to is the calculation of inflation. Now, if that's what you're alluding to, then yes. In the 80s, they used to calculate inflation in a much, much different way than they do now. And many experts say that if you were to calculate inflation, US inflation, the way they did it back in the 80s, it would be much, much higher than it is right now in the United States. Now, speaking of inflation, that's what we have to look forward to this Friday. So even though the US equity markets and fixed income markets are closed on Friday for Good Friday, it's actually going to be a pretty busy day and a pretty big day on Good Friday. In the morning, we have the PCE inflation index coming out. And then at 11:30, yet again, we are going to hear from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. Now, the last thing I'll say about inflation is the following. I think inflation is very different depending on the individual person. For example, my inflation rate living in Manhattan and living in Miami, Florida, is going to be much, much different than somebody else's, let's say, that maybe lives in, I don't know, pick a random city in Colorado or something, right? So there's extremes. I think you're seeing targeted inflation in large cities. I mean, the price. I mean, have you ever tried to go out to eat in a restaurant in Manhattan lately? I mean, it's insane. You know, when you walk in the door, it's like, you know, there's a banker doing underwriting on you just to make sure you could afford the place. It's nuts. Miami, Florida has been another city that has just gone absolutely skyward in terms of food going out to eat, in terms of rent, and in terms of, you know, if you were to buy a home, you know, so I would say shelter costs in and of itself in general. So the point I'm trying to make is everybody should be calculating their own personal CPI. And what I mean by that is at the end of the year, right, you could do this on a 12-month basis or you could do it month to month, is just write down on average what you pay for everything. Write down what your rent was in 2022, write down what your rent is in 2023, and then write down what your rent is in 2024, and that is your personal inflation rate. Do the same thing with food, do the same thing with energy. You know, if you have oil, you know, for many of us who live on Long Island, you probably have some sort of an oil burner, right? Yeah, so it's important to calculate your personal rate of inflation and not rely on the government statistics, I should say. All right, this is West 53rd Street. Now, the building we're looking at right here, this massive skinny one in the distance, this is 111 West 57th Street. This is the skinniest residential apartment building in the entire world. And this is MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, right here. Leroy's makes a lot of sense in these high populated cities. If no one lived in high populated cities, prices would definitely be down. Mark says, Tom, my HOA went up $250 per month. Wow. DM is joining us. What's up, DM? Mayor says, good evening from Illinois. Hope everything is going good over there. NMB 45 says, gouging, inflation, crazy regulations, and the carbon tax all playing a role in exacerbating high food prices here in Canada. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of complaints, and potentially rightfully so, about the crazy food inflation in Canada. I'm not a big Justin Trudeau guy, but, I won't comment any further. Mr. Hernandez says, Tom, as a young man who lives in Miami, it is expensive. It isn't cheap, but living in this amazing city, it's definitely worth it. I couldn't have said it better myself, right? I definitely agree. It kind of goes back to that old saying on Wall Street, right? I don't know if it's an old saying on Wall Street, but this is what one of my good friends always used to say. He's a very successful money manager. He says, stocks or companies are cheap for a reason, and stocks and companies are often expensive for a reason, right? Now, if you think about, all these people who, gamble and speculate in penny stocks and these meme stocks, and they think that, they're going to buy AMC, it's going to go to $2,000 a share, and then the stock goes on to trend towards zero and crater along with all these other non-profitable companies. There's a reason why stocks are cheap, oftentimes, right? And this kind of goes to the efficient market theory. I know a lot of quantitatives would probably disagree, but quant strategies are very different. But if you agree generally that markets are efficient, right, which means participants are going out there doing their diligence on companies, well, if a stock is getting creamed, there's usually a reason for that, right? And that's why generally what you want to do is you could work backwards. So if a stock has been continuously trending above its key moving averages, hitting 52-week highs and hitting new all-time record highs, well, you could work backwards and you could say, well, why is that? Why is this stock going gangbusters and it's trending very nicely? It's not volatile, it's trending very nicely. Well, it probably has absolutely blowout earnings and extremely robust sales, right? I mean, look at NVIDIA. Look at this run NVIDIA's had, and then go back and do an analysis of year over year, earnings power, revenue power. There's reasons for this, right? That's why it's kind of unfortunate. A lot of newer investors, they'll kind of get suckered into these, penny stock schemes where they're buying, $3 stocks. And they think it's going to be the next big thing, but they never do any fundamental work on it, right? They don't have any earnings. A lot of times these little penny stocks don't even have any revenue. A lot of times they're scams. So there's a reason why Miami is expensive. There's a reason why cities like New York are expensive, San Diego, because people want to live there. It's nice to be there, right? Coastal cities in general are always going to be very expensive. There's opportunities, there's job growth. So I definitely agree. We're looking at Trump Tower now. Let me go back up and see the comments that I missed. Hey, Chris D is here, Neo. Someone says Trudeau is a disaster. Ace Options Trading, what's going on? Leroy says, agree. I used to live in the Key Largo, Florida. Wow, that's really beautiful. Damn. Key Largo. MBA Elias, what's up? ICM 65 says don't buy individual stocks. Stick with mutual funds like VOO. Well, VOO is not a mutual fund. VOO is an ETF that tracks the S&P 500. But if you're an active money manager on Wall Street and you're trying to generate alpha, you're going to have to get some risk on with individual stocks. But I generally agree. I mean, if you're just, working, and you want to invest your money and compound it over time, the S&P 500 usually on average compounds at about 8 to 10% a year. Now, this building right here, this black one, is Trump Tower. And Donald Trump had a pretty good day today. How much money did he make on paper? Like $2 billion bucks, something like that? Truth Social now is trading under the ticker symbol DJT. That had a lot of crazy price action today. What was the top tick of that stock today? Like 78 bucks? I think it settled in the mid 50s, like $58 a share, but that was some wild trading. I was watching it just for fun. I'm sure Brad's brain, if he's in the chat, I think he said he was going to buy his individual one share of the company. You know what, let's actually go down here because we may be able to walk down 6th Avenue. Yeah, no worries. Dan H says, I think the S&P 500 is a complete bubble. How? I mean, maybe you're right. But look, there's a very, very high correlation between the trajectory of equity prices and earnings power, right? That's why a lot of times you can create these models, and that's why Microsoft Excel is such a good tool, because you can go back and pull this data from places like Yahoo Finance. It has historical data of S&P earnings going back, 10, 20 years, probably even longer. And you can make a chart of S&P 500 earnings or EPS, and you could overlay that on the actual indice. And what you'll notice is that price, right, the price of the index generally tends to lead earnings by 6 months. So there's a very, very high correlation between an uptick in earnings, so profitability, and stock prices. I mean, look at the COVID crash, right? We had a mini earnings flash crash, as I like to call it. All right, guys, this is 135 West 57th Street. Now, the reason why I'm taking you guys here is because it may look familiar to you guys, does it? This is where we used to start the live streams a long, long time ago. It used to be the WeWork. Now, Adam Neumann actually made another bid to buy back WeWork for $500 million. I mean, this guy is an animal. I mean, look, I respect that a lot. You gotta have a lot of guts and a lot of nerve, actually, to do that. Did anybody hear that? That Adam Neumann, the original founder and CEO of WeWork, after this massive multi-billion-dollar bubble, that's a bubble, right? WeWork was an absolute bubble. If you want to get a little bit more on the edge, we could call it a couple other things. But after that whole bubble burst, he's really considering coming back and buying his company for $500 million bucks after he's made billions off of this thing. Insane. Absolutely insane. MD says, but WeWork didn't work. Yeah. Well, I will be... It's easy to kind of throw stones, right? I will say this. Adam Neumann is an unbelievable entrepreneur. That is undeniable. And Adam Neumann is a master, and I'm talking about a master sales guy. Okay? As someone who spent pretty much my entire career in sales at the enterprise level, Adam Neumann, if you've ever listened to that guy talk, I mean, he is just an absolute persuasive machine. The guy is an absolute animal. If you ever listen to any of the interviews with him, he knows how to reframe. He knows how to deflect. I mean, the guy he has very, very good talent. And that's why so many people gave him so much money. I mean, look at some of the greatest investors on planet Earth, like Masayoshi Son from SoftBank. The guy gave him multiple billions of dollars. Unfortunately, all that investment went to zero pretty much. But now he's even getting tons of money from some of the top venture guys in the space, like Andreessen Horowitz, Mark Andreessen, right? Giving him, I don't know if it was $1 billion. I think it's multiple hundreds of millions for a new venture again. So I think in conclusion, WeWork is a great product. I was a paying customer of WeWork for a long time. I think the concept is fantastic. It really does help small businesses a lot to have a dedicated workspace for, $300 a month, $400 a month. So I've always had a great experience with WeWork. I was a paying customer for many years. So, I mean, we'll give them that. But I think after all of that, losing billions of dollars in shareholder value, to kind of come back and try to buy the company again, I think it's in a little bit of bad taste, but maybe that's just how he's wired. Sometimes these startup founders are so attached to their companies, they're like their children. Like, companies are like their babies. Yeah, NBA Live says Adam Newman could sell sand to people living on the beach. The guy is so persuasive, and he's very charismatic in person. If you ever met him in person, I've met him in person at 1166 Avenue of the Americas. I told this story a million times. But at the time, SoftBank was heavily invested in WeWork, and SoftBank was also heavily invested in a telecommunications company called Sprint. That's not around anymore. T-Mobile is now Sprint. T-Mobile is a great company, by the way. After the merger, I worked for T-Mobile for a little bit, and that is a very good company to work for, and it reflects positively in the share price. But yeah, the main corporate office was in the Marsh McLennan building, and sometimes Adam Newman, the WeWork team, and the SoftBank team would come into the office at like late hours of the night, which kind of matches up with all those allegations that Adam Newman would take the money that he was supposed to be using to run WeWork and fly around on private jets, go out to all these restaurants and party. I'm not going to say that's what he did. Those are allegations. But what I could say is I definitely believe it, because his team, they would come in with ripped jeans, beanies, and they didn't look like the typical, billionaire. These were like the classic tech bro, wearing beanies and skinny jeans billionaires. Sabrina Fair says, wait, Tom, you met Adam Newman from WeWork? I did, in the city at 1166 Avenue of the Americas. Yeah, this was a while ago. All right, let me scroll back at some of the comments. I'm curious what you guys think about that. Melissa 2087 says, Tom, I remember the WeWork documentary on Hulu. Sharon says, has anybody watched We Crash on Apple TV? I think Hawaii recommended that to me a bunch of times. I have yet to see it, but I'm interested in seeing it. Dutchman says, WeWork filed for bankruptcy with $19 billion worth liabilities. This is Alwyn Court right here. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We do these live streams almost every single night, starting at 8:30. Now this building is 157 or 157 West 57th Street. If you want to see what one of the apartments looks like inside this building, just type !57. I filmed a property tour of the last available sponsor unit in the building. The developer is Gary Burnett. Hey, Vara is here. Bren, what's going on? Speaking of Hawaii, apparently there was an impromptu concert in Times Square. I didn't even know what was going on until Hawaii told me about it. So Shakira was performing live in Times Square. That's insane. It's incredible. You're only really going to get sporadic things like that in New York City. That's another reason why it's so expensive to live here, right? I mean, you could be in your office getting some work done, and then you can get a text from a buddy that says, hey, why don't you walk 2 blocks over to Times Square? Shakira is going to perform a free concert. Just kind of incredible. All right, so we're going to turn the corner here and head towards Columbus Circle. Now, one of the other topics that we kind of spent some time talking about tonight was that big statement that came from the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, about how if the United States doesn't rein in a lot of this government spending, we're going to have to cut some of these entitlements, like Social Security and healthcare for seniors and the like. Now, that's all quite obvious, right? I think Larry Fink is stating the obvious. I believe the reason why he's saying it is not because people don't already know that. It's because I think his voice, I should say, particularly, speaking out about it, could potentially have some political influence, kind of throwing his weight around. So it's stating the obvious, but with good intention. And you're starting to see this more and more. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, has come out and said this multiple times as of late. Stanley Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones. And it's very critical that they're saying it now because this is an election year. And not one presidential candidate, well, we only have 2 now. We're stuck between, the old guy and the other old guy. Not one of them would dare right now open their mouth and say, hey, when I'm president of the United States, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to start cutting entitlements, I'm going to start reining in government spending, and I'm going to balance the budget. That would automatically guarantee them to lose the election. Even though that's probably what America needs, is the, a quick taste of the medicine, short-term pain for long-term gain. That's not going to get anybody elected. So what do you think are some solutions, right? We've talked about the problem almost ad nauseum, and everybody really understands it, right? That if you keep spending in perpetuity, there could come a point where foreign governments no longer want to subsidize our lifestyle. And that's essentially what's happening, right? Because somebody has to buy the debt. So what is the solution here? Or is it even possible? Are we even talking in reality? Or should we just accept it? That the government's going to continue to spend in perpetuity forever? I would say we should act like they're going to spend in perpetuity forever and not do the right thing. Because essentially what that'll allow us to do is take extreme ownership of our lives and our own situation to say, look, if you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, heck, even if you're in your 40s, I think the automatic default right now should be that you're not going to get a dime of your Social Security. It's gone. Poof. And that's going to put you in a frame of mind to say, I need to take things and take matters into my own hands now, right? I need to figure out a way to save and become self-sufficient so I can 100% support myself in retirement, because I know for a fact that the government isn't going to do the right thing, and Social Security is going to go bust. And even if it doesn't go bust and you still get it, what is going to be the value of your dollar, right? What is going to be the value of those Social Security checks? I think that's what a lot of people are missing. When they say that Social Security is going to go bust, I don't think it technically means that there's going to be no more checks distributed. If anything, it means there'll be more checks distributed, but the value of those checks won't be able to buy anything, right? Won't even be able to buy the shirt off your back. So I think we should all double down and triple down on becoming extremely self-sufficient, hyper self-sufficient. Because if we wake up in 50 years and the government actually does the right thing, well then guess what? We're going to be extremely wealthy, extremely prosperous, extremely self-sufficient, and we'll be able to enjoy all of the well, I was going to say the things that the government's going to give us. It's essentially our money, but ACE options trading, so this is why dividend investing is extremely important. Agreed. The sell text, some people just will not save or invest. I see that changing though. I see habits changing slowly but surely. Yeah, John's like $1,100 a month when hamburgers cost $50. Insane. MD says my neighbor was allowed to collect large amounts of her dead ex-husband. Social Security? That's weird. Hey, ETC333, what's going on? Thank you for joining us. KML, so stating the obvious is becoming more and more unpopular, for sure. Now this is 1 Central Park West. This is the Trump International Hotel and Tower. You have 3 doors. This is Jean Georges, Michelin star restaurant. Door number 2 is the hotel, but door number 3 is the residences. Now I've always said, I would actually prefer to live in this building, I think. I'm actually going to make up my mind here, than Billionaires Row. You guys got to look up some either, street easy listings, or just look up YouTube, type in 1 Central Park West, and watch some of the property tours from some of the high floor units at the Trump International Hotel and Tower. The views are unreal. And the reason for that is because you have unobstructed Central Park views, right? The same Central Park views that you would kind of get on Billionaires Row, but you could also see every single building on New York City's Billionaires Row in an unobstructed straight line. So in my view, that makes up the most unique view in the entire city. I wish there was a way I could get you guys up there. Hopefully if I ever land a listing in that building, I'll definitely give you guys the pleasure of bringing you up there. But you can kind of see the lobby of the residence. Just imagine this view right here, but a little bit higher up. Now, if you're on Billionaires Row, right, you have a perfectly centered view of Central Park, but you don't get to see all of the other beautiful architecture on Billionaires Row. Sabrina Fair, I'm down. I'm totally down for that. Jean Georges is good, but I prefer other places, but I'm down. The cell text is I would rather be in the sticks than a city view. Yeah, it was actually kind of nice. I was in Henderson, Nevada. Maybe we have some people from Nevada in the chat. I used to work for a company whose headquarters was in Nevada. We had this big warehouse. It's 32,000 square foot warehouse in Henderson, Nevada. That's where we would do all of our manufacturing, pick, packing, and shipping. This is the Michelin star kitchen. You can see actually all the chefs working here. But one of the things that was so amazing to me is that you would be on sort of the street level where I was at my company, and then you would look up at the mountains in Nevada, and there was literally snow on the mountains, but it was like 80 degrees and 95 degrees in the daytime, just blistering heat on the ground. But even Nevada now, even places near Vegas are getting really expensive. You've had tons and tons of capital flight. This was all due to the pandemic, out of major elitist coastal cities into some of the secondary and tertiary cities, making them ridiculously expensive too, unfortunately. They're saying that Miami is probably going to become more expensive than New York City soon, which is unfortunate. Now, we had some interesting economic data come out today. We heard the Case-Shiller Home Index, and home prices went up yet again. Not only on a month-over-month basis, but also on a year-over-year basis. So on a month-over-month basis, home prices were up about 0.1%, right? And this tracks across the major 20 metro cities that it tracks, right? So 0.1% increase on a month-over-month basis, and I believe it was a 6.4% year-over-year increase. Really crazy. And the cost of living, or housing prices, rent prices, aren't coming down as fast as people would have expected in this higher interest rate environment. And I think the reason for that is because the Fed just totally overdid it and really, really loused things up in a major way since the lows of 2008 with ZIRP, which is essentially an acronym that stands for Zero Interest Rate Policy. I believe we've left rates locked at zero for too long, and it's flooded the market with so much liquidity, and people got so wealthy that if you think about the majority of people who have a mortgage outstanding on their home right now, over 70% of those are below 4% on a 30-year fixed. So there's no incentive to pay down your free money, right? Why would anybody want to sell and pay off their free money just so they can go buy someplace else that's probably a lot more expensive? It's going to double or triple your payment, and money is going to be more expensive if you want to take out a mortgage, right? Additionally, one fact that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about is all of the excess built up demand on the sidelines. You can look at this data live if you go to the St. Louis Federal Reserve website. So if you go to the St. Louis Federal Reserve website and you look up money market balances, so the amount of dollars or liquidity in money markets, it's over $6 trillion. Okay? And money markets now are paying a little bit less than 5%, so that's going to compound out. So should there really be any, major correction in the housing market, you have so much firepower on the sidelines, waiting, ready, and willing to go. I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a pretty big commercial real estate broker in New York, and he's pricing out a lot of deals and shopping a lot of deals for clients. And everybody is sort of says the same thing, right? They think the end is near. They think, there's going to be this massive commercial real estate crash, but there's so much liquidity and so much funds on the sideline of people ready to go and pounce in the market. So there's so much competition. And I think that was really due to the past decade of artificially suppressed rates. And it's going to take a long time to work off that excess. Hey, Chris B says, I'm fixing to buy a house in the next month, and it is insane. I'm selling a house and making great money, but it's fake money in this market. What do you mean by that, Chris? Like, the profit you would get from that home sale would buy you maybe an equal... Are you thinking about like upgrading or downsizing or what? I definitely understand, right? Because there's not a lot of good inventory on the market. I'm not too sure which market you're in, but at least here, there's not a lot of very good inventory. If there's something good on the market, it goes in less than 30 days. Hey, Victor C, what's going on? Thanks so much for joining. Road Dog, welcome. Mr. Tren, Pineapple Water. This is guys across my street. An excavator just knocked down a house valued at $1 million for no reason, but put up a new home. Crazy. That's happened a lot where I am, out on Long Island. And it's also happening all over Miami too. People are essentially buying, like let's say if you have a New Yorker or a person from Boston, or even somebody from LA, right, that buys, a modest, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in South Florida, right? They'll just pay $500,000 for it, when 5 years ago those were $250,000 homes. But they're essentially just paying $500,000 for the land. They couldn't care less about the house that's on it. They come in, they knock down the house, and then they build these crazy dream homes on it. That's even happening in North Miami Beach now. It's kind of wild. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We usually go live every single day starting at 8:30, walking around the city, talking about the financial markets, latest news. G. Raymond's is exactly Tom. It's happening all over. Now that's a good sign if you're interested in kind of investing in an up-and-coming neighborhood. If you see, every fifth house on the block is getting acquired and they're building, really, really nice product, that's in turn going to increase the property values generally of everything around it. Mike Deese, Tom, a decent house in the Boston area is now $1 million. Whew. And how big is that? In terms of square footage, so the decent home in the Boston area, how much square foot is that going to buy you? Is that going to buy you 2,500 square feet, 3,000 square feet? I'm not too familiar with the Boston market. This is Central Park Tower. It's a great shot of it. Points Travelers is subsidizing lots with mansions is happening in Nashville, Tennessee as well. Now, Points Traveler, hasn't there always been very wealthy, like extremely, extremely wealthy neighborhoods in and around Nashville? I remember the one time that I went there, I was hanging around Vanderbilt University, and there were some crazy looking homes in and around Vanderbilt. Justin says, did the Baltimore bridge collapse have an effect on the stock market? Well, I think that's yet to be determined. I think this could be way worse than anybody's ever expected, or this could be a non-issue. Because we have to understand, supply chains relatively are just starting to heal and get back to normal. Right? Think about what the pandemic did. That screwed up supply chains for over 2 years. So do I think it's going to be cataclysmic? No, but I really don't think that. I don't think people, and again, and I'm not an expert in logistics. Maybe we actually do have people in the chat that are. But this is a major port. on the East Coast of the United States. Now, probably a lot of that stuff will be rerouted to New York, but still, from a logistics standpoint, this could be, I mean, it's not going to help. Let's just say that, it's not going to help. This could be bad. This could be major supply chain issues. But then again, that's total speculation on my part. I am not an expert in supply chain logistics, and I'm not an expert in this port in Baltimore. I was reading some preliminary stuff on X that says many of the United States auto imports come through there. Mike Deese is about 2,500 square feet, fixer-upper. Oops. Every time I go to read a comment, the chat spazzes on me.
Oh, yeah. And then okay.
Weird. Doc 7 says the rear view mirror is always cleaner than the windshield. That's a good point. This is the Ed Sullivan Theater.
At 1 o'clock in the morning.
Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Bones, thank you for joining. Good night to you as well. Now, guys, on 54th Street, this building right here, this used to be the headquarters of Bad Boy Entertainment, Bad Boy Worldwide, Sean Combs' company, or P. Diddy. Now, he's in hot water too now. I believe he got arrested in Miami. So add that to the vortex of news. There was allegations of really disturbing things. But anyway, yeah, that building used to be Bad Boy Entertainment. They're going to do an internal demolition and make condominiums in that building. NBA Elias's port in New York will get more business. Now, what's the busiest port in the United States? Is it LA? I'd imagine in the top 5 it has to be New York, LA. What else? G. Raymond says he is in boiling hot water. Joe says he was not arrested. Oh, he wasn't? You see? Fog of war again. That's why I always say anytime something comes out, just better to wait a week. Because I have a theory. This is my theory. Anytime you have major news, the first 7 days is completely fake. Like most everything that you see in the first 7 days of a major, terrorist attack, anything, literally anything, it's all nonsense, right? There's people that are trying to mislead you, misinformation, and you usually get the truth about a week later. So I usually tend to check out from the news and then loop back in a week when the actual real full story comes out. Alright, so we are now headed directly into the heart of Times Square. There was a major concert going on here tonight. Shakira, her new album is coming out. And I guess she had this crazy concert in the middle of Times Square. Pretty wild. Now, I totally unrelated to financial topics, but wasn't Shakira married to PK? He was one of my favorite soccer players growing up. Gerard Piqué, I believe. Now, we were talking about the Case-Shiller home price index that came out today. One of the, I would say, the most surprising sectors to many on Wall Street that's been actually leading this market is home builders. Home builders have been extremely strong. It's been semiconductors and home builders that have been going gangbusters. And I think that's the market telling us that the vast majority of homes that are going to be coming on the market is not from resales. It's probably going to come from new development because people just don't want to let go of their properties. They don't want to deal with the process of selling. They already are locked into extremely low interest rates. So a lot of that new supply is going to come from the builders. All right, this is Junior's. Now, this isn't the original location. The original location is in Brooklyn. I believe right outside Atlantic Terminal, Brooklyn, the Barclays Center. Indices Shakir is being investigated for tax fraud. Well, here's what I'll say about that. I had no idea about that. But usually those celebrities, they have a team of people doing things for them. Now, I know the liability, that doesn't absolve you of liability, but her people probably made a big mess up. It's unfortunate because a lot of celebrities, particularly a lot of athletes, that come into a lot of money very, very quickly, oftentimes they get taken advantage of by a lot of their managers, you know, business managers and things like that. So it's a big issue. There was a wild statistic that more than half of the NBA players go broke upon retirement just because they don't know how to manage the money, which is a scary thing because, you know, what is the average lifespan of a professional athlete? Probably not too long, right? Particularly in the NFL. So you really got to have trusted advisors around you for sure. So if there's any talented star athletes in the chat and you're about to come into a massive sum of money, the first thing I would do is pay for I would just get a degree in finance. You know, pay the money, go to Wharton, buy your way in, and learn the money game. And then you'll be set. Hey, Rick B, what's going on? Thanks so much for joining. $9.99 says 4 years is the average. It's actually pretty busy in Times Square tonight. We'll head over and take a look at the old Lehman Brothers headquarters, which is now Barclays. So there across the street, you see Barclays Investment Bank. which is a major German bank. But that was once Lehman Brothers. MBA Elias says these scholarship athletes should study finance while in college. Well, I'm actually very glad. Aren't athletes able to get paid now? Something like that. I think if you're a college athlete and your college is making money off of you, you know, you should be able to get paid. I mean, you're not a slave. You don't work for free. So a lot of these star basketball players that bring in the school tons of money, a lot of these star, you know, college football players, they should be entitled to compensation. That's just my thing. Now, many people would argue, yeah, but they're going to school for free. I get that, but they're very high-valued targets. They're very high-valued individuals. They could go to school for free anywhere. They don't need you. I mean, am I right or wrong? You know, they could go to any school they wanted. They could get a pick of any school. Okay, they could have the pick of the litter. So if they want to take an endorsement deal, they should be allowed to do that. I don't think a lot of people realize how much money these colleges make off of the athletics. These are multi-million dollar industries. All right, let's check out the stage. It's somewhere here. It's probably going to buffer a little bit. Oh yeah, I think it was right here. If you look closely, you'll see a little door opening. I think that's where the stage was, right here. Yeah, Hawaii's college athletes can now get paid for endorsements, and I agree with that. I think they should. Hey, Lupe, what's going on? Let's exit stage right. I know this is a little bit unrelated, but didn't the NFL, maybe we have some big football fans in here. Oh, look at this. This is the new Ford Mustang Mach-E. This thing is pretty cool. Now, didn't the NFL just initiate a new rule that you're not allowed to tackle people from the waist? Something like that? Now, they said that particular way of tackling just increases injury like fivefold. But it looked pretty normal to me. It looks like that's how everybody tackles each other whenever I watch football. I don't know. Hey, Cape Cod Sarah says, looks like the wind is finally calmed down. Yeah, a little bit, but I also have the microphone attachment on tonight, which has a wind guard. But generally speaking, yeah, it's calmed down quite a bit. Look at this. This is the Church of Scientology here. Lin-Manuel Miranda. I can never pronounce that name. This is the Hotel Edison. Drop hip tackle. Copy that. Love his kind, says Tom. Did you see the bridge collapse? Yeah, we talked about the bridge collapse for a while. Now the biggest concern is what's that's going to do to the supply chain. But it's tragic. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. The biggest concern is the 6 people that died. But after that, it's what's going to happen to the supply chain. Now we're passing the construction site of the brand new 740 8th Avenue. I know I've showed you guys this building many times, but we do have some new people. You guys have to see how crazy this building is going to look, and it's going to sit right here. I'll show you a picture of it. So if you see the photo on your screen, that is the brand new rendering of 740 8th Avenue. It's going to be nicknamed the Torch. It's an insane building. It's going to be about 850 hotel rooms. You're going to have a drop ride attraction at the top. You're going to have a VIP lounge and 2 restaurants. And the developer is Extel, which is my personal favorite developer in all New York City. They put on the best projects in the city, bar none. And this is where it's going to sit, right here. The Torch. I think it's starting to rain a little bit. I can't even imagine how that's going to look, but Western Mass Dave says Baltimore is not a huge port. It's not a major port in terms of tonnage. Yeah, they'll probably just reroute everything to New York, but it definitely has to be in the top 10. I mean, the number 1 is what? Long Beach? I think that's what you guys said. So in Cali, New York. Apparently it's really going to impact the automotive industry. Kathleen, the realtor. This is Restaurant Row in New York City. West 46th Street. I don't know why I forgot that. This is Restaurant Row. Solo Flyer says Baltimore is the 9th largest port. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Now, in terms of just a general market overview here, you're starting to see some of the leaders pull back here in a major way. And all of the major equity indices, like the S&P 500, the Dow, and the NASDAQ, not only closed at the low of the day, but as they closed at their low of the day, volume started to pick up here materially. So I think the 50-day is your target for the S&P. You had a big reversal in Microsoft today. Pretty much big reversal across the board in Meta. So hopefully, fingers crossed, there'll be an upcoming correction that'll set us up for a very nice second entry point into some of these leaders going into the summer. We'll see. Thursday, we're going to be sending out our 5th issue of the Behind the Street newsletter, which is our free market research piece. So if you guys want to receive that this Thursday, we're going to be talking about a lot. Just go ahead and type !news, NEWS in the chat, and it's going to bring you to our Substack. Going to be a lot to cover. And we're going to spend a lot of time on those shipping stocks, actually. Shipping stocks have been doing pretty good, which is more confirmation that the economy is rather robust. Yeah, NBA Elias, I haven't visited the port specifically there in Miami, but as you go over the causeway, you could see it, and it's actually pretty cool. So as I'm on my Vespa, I'll actually be there next week. This month flew by. Man, March absolutely flew by. Maybe I'll get some footage over there. I think it's called the MacArthur Causeway, right? Now, during sunset, that is like an unbelievable place to ride a bike, drive your car, Vespa, and whatnot. I've seen the best sunsets of my entire life in Miami, Florida. But if you want to know the place, like the number one place to see a sunset in South Florida, you just go a little bit north of Bal Harbor and you go right over the Haulover Inlet, and right as you go over that bridge of Haulover, you take this big main drag all the way to Sunny Isles Beach. And there's no lights, there's nothing. It's just essentially this 2-lane highway on the sand. And it's unbelievable view of all of the water by Haulover Beach. You see palm trees everywhere. And then in the distance, you see the brand new Ritz-Carlton residences. Right there at Sunny Isles. It's an awesome place if anybody wants to visit South Florida. If you're looking for a cool place to visit, consider staying at Sunny Isles Beach or Surfside Bal Harbor. All right, this is now the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of New York City. If you guys have been enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We usually do these streams every single night starting at 8:30. But look at the contrast here. You're going to see a lot of these pre-war buildings with these fire escapes. And then in the distance, you see the new New York of Central Park Tower. That is an Extel development. But it's cool to kind of see the contrast, right? You have all the pre-war in the front here, and these buildings have been here forever. And then you can see all the Midtown, those big skyscrapers, and then even down into the Hudson Yards. Mohammed is saying Siesta Key. Now, Siesta Key is fantastic. However, that's all the way on the west coast, near Sarasota, Florida. Sarasota, Florida is amazing.